My name is Emma, and I'm 19 years old. For as long as I can remember, I've always been in my older brother's shadow. Lucas, 2 years older than me, was the golden child. In my parents' eyes, he could do no wrong. He was the math genius who aced Olympiads without breaking a sweat. While I had to study for hours just to keep my grades in check, my parents never even tried to hide their favoritism. When Lucas turned 16, they bought him a shiny new car. 2 years later, when it was my turn, I got a bicycle from a clearance sale. I remember smiling and thanking them, but inside, I was devastated. The only person who ever made me feel like I mattered was my grandmother. She remembered every birthday, always gave me pocket money, and promised to help me when I started college. That promise was the only thing that kept me going through high school. I was accepted into a college across the state with a partial scholarship and moved into the dorms. I thought my grandma would send the money she promised, but nothing came. I asked my mom about it, and she freaked out on me. "How selfish can you be?" She yelled over the phone. "Grandma's going through some financial problems. You should be ashamed of yourself for asking. Get a job if you need money." So I did. I got a job at a cafe near campus. It helped with food, since they sometimes gave us free meals and let us buy yesterday's unsold items at a discount. But it wasn't enough. So, I picked up a second job writing content for websites. Between 2 jobs and classes, I barely had time to sleep. Even with both jobs, I was struggling. There were times when the cafe closed for holidays, and I went hungry. Once, they shut down for a week to sanitize the place, and I nearly passed out from hunger. My roommate, Sarah, saved me during those times. She shared her food and even her money when my laptop broke down. I needed it for my writing job and for schoolwork, but I didn't have the money to fix it. Sarah came through again, borrowing $500 from her parents to help me. I kept track of every penny in a notebook, determined to pay her back one day. Meanwhile, my brother, Lucas, was supposedly thriving in college. At least, that's what my parents said. They told me that he was so busy with his studies and exams that he couldn't even make it to family gatherings. I rarely heard from him directly, just the occasional text, where he seemed distracted and vague about his life. Things stayed like this until last weekend, when I took a bus to my hometown to visit Grandma for her birthday. I was excited to see her, even though my wallet was nearly empty after buying her a small gift, a framed photo of us from my high school graduation. When I arrived at Grandma's house, the party was already underway. My parents were there, along with aunts, uncles, and cousins. The only person missing was Lucas. I asked, "Where's Lucas?" As I hugged my mom. "Oh, he's swamped with exam prep," my dad quickly answered. "He sends his love." Grandma's dining table was piled high with food, more than I'd seen in months. My stomach growled as I took my seat, trying not to look too eager as I filled my plate. We started with toasts, everyone taking turns praising Grandma for her wisdom and generosity. The conversation broke into smaller groups as we ate, and I quietly enjoyed my meal. But then, my cousin Tyler looked at me across the table. "Damn, Emma, why are you so skinny? You've lost a ton of weight," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Before I could respond, my mom jumped in. "Oh, you know these college girls and their trendy diets. She's probably doing that intermittent fasting thing." I opened my mouth to correct her, but Grandma spoke first. "Tyler's right," Grandma said, her eyes narrowing with concern. "Emma, you're too thin." The fork slipped from my fingers, clattering onto my plate. The room fell silent. "Isn't the $1,500 I send you every month enough for food?" Grandma asked. Her voice was sharp, cutting through the tension in the room. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What money? I whispered. Grandma, I haven't received any money from you. Not since I started college. The silence grew heavier. All eyes turned to my parents. Robert, Grandma said, her voice dangerously calm as she addressed my father. Would you care to explain? My parents didn't say anything at first. My mom started crying, and Dad cleared his throat awkwardly. Then, he admitted, we've been using the money for Lucas. He's got a gambling problem. He got involved with the wrong crowd in high school, and it just escalated. We've tried everything, therapists, clinics, but nothing's worked. As Dad explained, my mind raced back to my childhood. All those times Lucas got whatever he wanted. All those times I was told to be more like him. All those times I went hungry, thinking my grandma had forgotten her promise. Grandma's voice cut through the tension. Everyone, please continue enjoying the celebration without me, she said. Robert, Elizabeth, my office, now. Without a word, my parents followed her, their shoulders slumped, looking like scolded children. I sat frozen in my chair, barely aware of the awkward small talk that resumed around me. Tyler patted my shoulder and whispered, "You okay?" But I couldn't even nod. I excused myself and walked to the hallway, where Grandma's office door was closed. I pressed my ear against it, straining to hear. The voices inside were too quiet, and somehow, that made it worse. I could only catch fragments of their conversation, years of lying, Grandma's voice trying to help, Dad's desperate tone, Grandma again, demanding answers. 30 minutes later, my parents emerged from the office. My mom's eyes were puffy, and neither of them spoke to anyone. They grabbed their coats and left without saying goodbye. Grandma came back into the room with a forced smile on her face. "Who's ready for cake?" she asked, as if nothing had happened. The party continued awkwardly, with guests pretending not to notice the elephant in the room. When the last guest had left, Grandma took my hand. "Emma, I don't think you should go home tonight. Stay here for a few days." I nodded, relieved. The thought of facing my parents made me physically ill. The next morning, Grandma sat me down at her kitchen table with a cup of coffee. Her eyes were tired, but her voice was steady. "I need to tell you everything I learned from your parents yesterday," she said, looking at me over her mug. I nodded, trying to prepare myself for whatever was coming. I hadn't expected things to be this bad, but hearing her words confirmed the deep weight of the lies. She took a deep breath, then started. "I never directly paid for yours or Lucas's tuition. I gave the money to your parents because I trusted them. I didn't want to deal with bank transfers, it seemed too complicated for me at my age." She took a sip of her coffee, watching me closely. "You got a partial scholarship, and instead of the $100,000 I gave them for your education, it only cost $40,000. They pocketed the other $60,000 and spent it all on Lucas." My hands trembled around my mug. My mind couldn't quite wrap itself around her words. "What?" I whispered, unable to believe what I was hearing. "There's more," Grandma continued, her eyes locking with mine. "Lucas never went to college." "What?" I nearly spilled my coffee. "They always said after high school they sent him to Riverdale to get him away from his gambling friends. They thought a fresh start would help. But no, it didn't. He found new friends, with the same bad habits." I felt like the ground was slipping beneath me. "So, all those times they said he was busy with exams, they were lies?" Grandma nodded. "Yes. I gave them $80,000 for his education too." She squeezed her hands around the mug, her knuckles white. "Plus, the monthly allowance I've been sending for you. $1,500 every month for almost 2 years." I felt sick. I hadn't known any of this. I had always thought Lucas was just too busy for family events. I assumed he was in college, studying hard. But now, it felt like a betrayal to realize the truth, that all those times I struggled, working 2 jobs to survive, it was because my parents had been stealing from me. I thought he was studying, I said weakly, the words barely escaping my lips. I thought he was just busy. He wasn't, Grandma replied flatly. He was gambling online. And your parents have been paying his debts, putting him through rehab, paying for therapists. Nothing has worked. They've spent everything they had on him, and ignored you. Tears welled up in my eyes. All those years of feeling like I was invisible, of sacrificing everything just to make ends meet, and it was all for nothing. Grandma reached across the table and squeezed my hand, her voice softening. Sweetie, I'm so sorry. I should have checked in with you directly. This shouldn't have happened. I wiped my eyes, feeling the anger rise in me. What happens now? I asked, my voice shaky. What do I do? You keep studying, Grandma said firmly, looking at me with resolve. That's your job right now. And from now on, I'll transfer $2,000 directly into your account every month. No more middlemen. I stared at her, overwhelmed. For the first time in a long time, I felt like someone cared about me. Someone saw me, not as the afterthought, but as someone who mattered. I stayed with Grandma for the next few days. We spent our time talking about school, my dreams for the future, and just catching up. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't alone. My parents tried calling several times, but Grandma told them I wasn't ready to talk. And honestly, I wasn't sure if I would ever be ready to talk to them again. When it was time to return to college, Grandma drove me to the bus station. As we said goodbye, she pressed an envelope into my hand. Emergency fund, she said. Don't even think about refusing it. I shook my head, overwhelmed by the gesture. I'm not going to refuse it. But I will make sure to pay you back someday. I know you will, she said, smiling warmly. Now go and make something of yourself, Emma. You've earned it. I headed back to school, a mix of emotions swirling inside me. For the first time in ages, I didn't feel like I was drowning. Grandma's support gave me the breathing room I needed to focus on my studies. Back at college, I quit my content writing job, choosing to focus on school. With Grandma's money, I could work only at the cafe on weekends. I bought new clothes, stocked my mini fridge with actual food, and paid Sarah back every cent I owed her. For the first time since starting college, I wasn't exhausted and hungry all the time. My grades improved, and I even joined a study group. It felt like stepping out of a dark room into the light. 2 months later, I was sitting in the campus library when someone tapped me on the shoulder. I looked up to see Grandma standing there, grinning from ear to ear. Surprise inspection, she announced loudly, causing a few people to glance over at us. I jumped up and hugged her. Grandma, what are you doing here? Just making sure at least one of my grandchildren actually goes to college, she said with a wink. Let's get lunch. I have something to tell you. Over sandwiches at the campus cafe, Grandma dropped a bombshell. I've rewritten my will, she said casually, as if talking about the weather. My mouth dropped open. What? Why? You're my sole heir now. She took a bite of her sandwich, unbothered. Your parents have already received over $250,000 from me, that's their share. I was speechless. But, Grandma, I don't need it. It's not about need, Emma. It's about trust. I trust you to use what I leave behind wisely. You've handled all your hardships with grace, and that says a lot about your character. I didn't know what to say. After years of being the forgotten one, the other child, suddenly I was being seen. It was overwhelming. "Thank you," I finally managed to say. "Thank you for everything." Grandma smiled at me, proud. "You don't need to thank me yet. The road ahead is still long, but you're on the right path. Just keep moving forward." I was still processing everything when I got back to my dorm later that night. For the first time, I wasn't dreading the future. I knew that, with Grandma's support, I could make something of myself. The weeks passed quickly as I threw myself into my studies. I started to feel like I was finally living my life the way I wanted. My grades improved, and I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced before. I no longer had to juggle multiple jobs just to survive. Now, I could focus on school, and it was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. The freedom was life-changing. I could afford to buy textbooks instead of relying on library copies. I could eat 3 meals a day. I could even replace my worn-out shoes with new ones. It was a small luxury that had once felt impossible. Grandma kept calling every Sunday, and I looked forward to our chats. She never pressured me to reconcile with my parents, but she always made sure to listen when I needed to talk. She would tell me funny stories about her youth, making me laugh and forget about the heaviness in my heart. Despite everything that had happened, I still couldn't bring myself to forgive my parents. They'd made their choice. They had chosen Lucas, and I had been left behind. But, more than that, they had lied to me for years, taken advantage of my trust, and left me to struggle alone. One evening, as finals were approaching, I received a call from Aunt Kathy, my mom's sister. Her voice was serious, and I could tell this was something important. "Emma," she said, her tone somber. "I thought you should know. Your parents sold their house." I felt a pang in my chest, but quickly pushed it down. "They're renting an apartment now," Aunt Kathy continued. "They're struggling. The money from the house barely covered Lucas's gambling debts. He's gotten involved with some dangerous people." I didn't know what to feel. Part of me wanted to feel sympathy, but another part of me just couldn't bring myself to care. My parents had made their choices, and now they were living with the consequences. "I know I'm not saying you should help them," Aunt Kathy added, sensing my hesitation. "But I thought you should know." "Thanks for telling me," I replied, my voice flat. After hanging up, I sat on my bed, thinking about my brother. I felt a twinge of sadness for him. He had always been a victim of his own addiction, but more than that, he had been a victim of our parents' enabling. They had never let him face the consequences of his actions. They had always bailed him out, and now, he was paying the price. I thought about my parents too. For all their mistakes, I couldn't completely hate them. But I realized that I wasn't responsible for their choices, and I wasn't going to let their mess become my burden. I called Grandma that night and told her about my conversation with Aunt Kathy. "Are you okay?" She asked gently. "Yeah," I said, surprised at how true it felt. "I feel sad for them, but I'm not responsible. I can't fix their problems. They've made their choices, and I've made mine." Grandma's voice was firm but loving. "Good. Because you're not responsible for their choices, Emma. You focus on building your life. That's your job now." It was comforting to hear that from her. She had always been my rock, and now, more than ever, I needed her wisdom. As the semester progressed, I found myself thinking less and less about my parents and Lucas. I was too busy with school and my new role as a research assistant to get caught up in their drama. I was finally living life on my terms, and I wasn't about to let anyone drag me back into the chaos. I kept my weekend job at the cafe because I actually enjoyed it. It was a nice break from studying, and the people there were kind. The work wasn't stressful, and it gave me a sense of community that I had never had before. For once, I was taking care of myself, without the constant pressure of trying to survive. Spring break was approaching, and Sarah, my roommate, invited me to join a trip to Miami with some friends. In the past, I would have immediately turned it down. Money was always tight, and I had never allowed myself the luxury of a vacation. But now, things were different. I didn't have to live that way anymore, you know what? I'm in, I said, grinning. Sarah looked at me, wide-eyed. Seriously? Yeah. I've been saving some of Grandma's money. I can actually afford it now. Sarah's jaw dropped. Wow, you've changed. This is a whole new Emma. I know, I said, laughing. I guess I'm learning how to live for myself. The week before spring break, I received a letter from my parents. It was short and to the point, with my mom's handwriting on the envelope. I almost threw it away unopened, but something stopped me. Curiosity won out, and I opened it. Emma, the letter started. We've moved to a smaller place. The address is below if you ever want to visit. Lucas is in rehab again. The doctors think he might have a chance this time if he sticks with the program. Your father and I have been doing a lot of thinking. We made mistakes, big ones. We can't change the past, but we want you to know we're proud of you for standing on your own 2 feet. I read the letter over and over, but there was nothing in it that made me feel any closer to them. No apology, no acknowledgement of the harm they'd caused. Just a vague admission of mistakes and a new address. I showed the letter to Sarah, and she rolled her eyes. That's it? After everything? That's all they have to say? I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. Part of me had hoped for more, an apology. A real conversation. But the other part of me knew that wasn't coming. They had made their choice long ago, and now they were trying to cover their tracks. I'm not going to visit them, I said, shaking my head. That's their decision. They chose Lucas, and they can live with the consequences. Over the next few weeks, I focused on school. I kept working at the cafe on weekends, and I threw myself into my studies. My grades improved even further, and I could feel myself growing. Grandma visited me again in late April. We went shopping, had a fancy dinner, and talked for hours. It felt like the world had opened up for me, and for the first time I wasn't worried about what was coming next. How are you really doing? She asked, over dessert. I'm good, I said, smiling. I'm actually really good. I never knew life could be this uncomplicated. Grandma reached across the table and squeezed my hand. That's how it should be at your age. Your only job right now is to learn and grow. I got a letter from my mom, I told her, pulling the envelope out of my bag. No apology. Just an update. Grandma's eyebrows rose. Are you going to respond? I shook my head. Not now. Maybe someday. But I'm not ready. That's fair, Grandma said. You take all the time you need. As final exams approached, I pushed myself harder. I wanted to make Grandma proud. For the first time, I was living my life on my own terms, and it felt incredible. As the spring semester came to an end, I could hardly believe how much had changed in such a short time. My grades had improved significantly, and I was even being considered for a research assistant position in my psychology department. This opportunity was something I would have never dreamed of a few months ago, when I was working 2 jobs and struggling just to survive. Now, I was thriving academically, and I felt like I was finally on the path I'd always wanted. Grandma's support had made all the difference. She was always there for me, checking in regularly, and providing both emotional and financial help when I needed it most. I was no longer just surviving, I was beginning to build a life. The weight of constantly juggling work, school, and hunger was gone. For the first time in years, I could just focus on being a student and taking care of myself. One afternoon, while walking to the library, I saw a flyer posted on the bulletin board. It was an announcement about a summer research stipend that the psychology department was offering to students with high academic standing. I thought about it for a moment. I had worked so hard to improve my grades, and now this opportunity was here. A part of me felt a bit overwhelmed, but mostly, I felt excited. I sat down at a nearby bench and immediately pulled out my phone to check the details. It was a competitive program, but it was also exactly the kind of opportunity one had been hoping for. I wasn't sure if I had a good shot at being selected, but I knew I had to try. It felt like the universe was giving me a chance, and I couldn't let it slip away. The next week, I submitted my application, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. I hadn't felt this optimistic about my future in a long time. Even if I didn't get the stipend, the fact that I was even applying for something like this felt like a huge accomplishment. Sarah, my roommate, noticed my enthusiasm and asked what was going on. I told her about the research assistant position and the stipend. "Emma, that's amazing," she said, her eyes wide with excitement. "You're really making things happen. I'm so proud of you." I smiled. I'm proud of me too, honestly. It feels good to finally be in control of my own life. Spring break had been a huge turning point for me. I went to Miami with Sarah and some other friends. And it was everything I'd never let myself dream of. I spent the whole week enjoying the sunshine, the beach, and laughing with friends. I bought new clothes, ordered whatever I wanted at restaurants, and even splurged on a parasailing adventure. It was the kind of freedom I'd always longed for but never allowed myself to have. When we returned to campus, I felt like a completely different person. I was tanned, relaxed, and more confident than ever before. I had learned to live for myself, to enjoy the small moments, and to stop worrying so much about the things I couldn't control. The phone call I received a week later caught me off guard. It was from my mom. "Emma," she said, her voice sounding strained. "We need to talk." I hadn't heard from her in months, and hearing her voice again made my stomach tighten. Part of me wanted to ignore the call, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Maybe I was ready for this conversation, maybe not, but I knew I had to face it eventually. "I don't know what to say," I said, my voice cold but calm. "You've made your choices, Mom." "I know," she said softly. "We made a lot of mistakes, and we regret them. We've been doing a lot of thinking. We wanted to let you know that we're proud of you. You've made something of yourself, and we're sorry it took us so long to see that." Her words were a weak attempt at an apology. And I wasn't sure how to respond. I had spent so much time being angry at her and Dad, but now, all I felt was emptiness. "Mom," I said slowly, "it's too late for that. I don't need your apology. You made your choice years ago. I'm done trying to fix things that aren't mine to fix." I heard her take a shaky breath on the other end of the line. "I just want you to know we're sorry. For everything." I paused, unsure of what to say next. "You should have said that a long time ago," I finally said. "But I've moved on. I'm building my own life now." She didn't respond right away, and I could hear her struggling with her emotions. "I understand," she said quietly, her voice breaking. "I just wanted to let you know that we love you." "I know," I replied, my voice steady but distant. "But I can't keep living in the past. I have my own life now." The conversation ended awkwardly, and I didn't feel any sense of closure. I didn't expect to, but I knew I'd said everything I needed to say. I had finally stopped depending on my parents for validation. I had stopped letting their decisions define my life, That night, I sat on my bed, staring at the letter from my mom that I had shoved into my drawer. It was exactly what I had expected, no real apology, just a vague acknowledgement of their mistakes. I didn't feel the need to respond to it. I was done with them. Over the next few weeks, I focused on my studies and my new job as a research assistant. Life was still challenging, but it was on my terms. I was making progress, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was on the right track. Grandma called every Sunday, always checking in on me and reminding me that I was doing the right thing. I started looking forward to our conversations even more. She was the one person who had always had my back, and I would forever be grateful for that. One day, as I was finishing up a study session in the library, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hey, Emma," the text started. "It's Lucas. I'm calling from rehab. Part of my recovery is making amends. And I wanted to reach out to you. I know what Mom and Dad did with your money, and I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I didn't know at the time, but that doesn't make it right." I stared at the message for a long time, not sure how to feel. Part of me wanted to scream at him, but another part of me felt a little bit of relief. It was the first real apology I had received from anyone in my family. I took a deep breath, then replied, "I don't know if I can forgive you, but I appreciate you acknowledging what happened. It's a start." After I hit send, I felt lighter. Maybe there would never be full resolution with my parents or Lucas, but I was learning to let go. I was learning to focus on the things that really mattered, the things that made me happy. For the first time, I was no longer defined by their mistakes. I was defining my own future. As the months passed, my life slowly but surely continued to transform. I had made peace with the fact that my parents and brother were no longer a part of my day-to-day life. The constant guilt, anger, and frustration I had felt for years were fading into the background. What was left was a sense of clarity and independence I'd never experienced before. I had finished my finals and was officially done with the semester. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. I had my research assistant position, my weekends at the cafe, and a growing group of friends. Most importantly, I had my future back. I was no longer weighed down by the constant need to prove myself to my family or to fight for scraps of love and attention. One morning, after another week of hard work, Grandma surprised me by showing up at my dorm again, grinning from ear to ear. I was sitting at my desk, reviewing notes for an upcoming exam, when I heard a knock on the door. "Surprise inspection," she declared, laughing as she walked in. I jumped up, startled but excited to see her. "Grandma, what are you doing here?" "Making sure my granddaughter is actually going to college," she teased, walking over to give me a hug. "Let's get lunch, I've got something to tell you." As we sat in the campus cafe, I listened closely as she shared some news. "I've been thinking," she began, "about what I want to do with my estate. And I've made a decision." I looked at her, wondering where this conversation was going. "You're my sole heir," she said simply. I blinked, taken aback by her words. "Grandma, I don't need any of that. You've already done so much for me." "I know, dear," she smiled, "but it's not about need. It's about trust. You've handled so much in your life with grace, even when it wasn't fair. You deserve this, and I trust you." Her words hit me harder than I expected. It was one thing to be supported emotionally, but this was different. She was giving me a future, not just a helping hand. It was a final gesture of trust. And it left me speechless. The conversation shifted to lighter topics as we finished our lunch. Grandma was as supportive as always, but I could tell she was eager to make sure I didn't focus too much on the money. She wanted me to keep pursuing my studies, build my life, and not be burdened by the past. "I'm proud of you, Emma," she said softly. But remember, it's not just about what I leave behind. It's about what you do with the life you have now." I nodded, my heart full. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a failure. I had built a life from the ground up, and I knew there was still so much more to come. As summer approached, I found myself growing even more excited for the opportunities that lay ahead. I had secured the research assistant position in the psychology department, and I was applying for summer internships to further my experience. The academic opportunities were endless, and I felt more prepared than ever before. It wasn't just about school anymore. I had the chance to build a career, to make a name for myself, and to live on my terms. I wasn't going to let anyone or anything hold me back. One evening, as I was walking back to my dorm from a study session, I received a message from my mom. I had been dreading this moment for a while, but I couldn't avoid it forever. She had sent me a text, "Emma, can we talk?" I wasn't sure how to respond. Part of me wanted to ignore it. But I knew I had to face this. I picked up the phone and dialed her number, the conversation feeling like it had been years in the making. "Mom?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I don't know what to say," she started, her voice shaky. "We've made so many mistakes, and I know we can't change the past. But we want you to know that we're proud of what you've become. We're sorry for all the pain we caused." I listened to her words, but they felt hollow. The apology was too little, too late. "I appreciate that you're acknowledging it," I said, my voice calm but firm. "But I've already moved on. I built my life, Mom. I can't keep waiting for things to be fixed." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "We just want you to know we love you." "I know," I said softly, "but I'm not the same person I was. I'm not waiting for you to change. I'm living for myself now." I ended the call not with a sense of closure, but with a sense of finality. I didn't need them to approve of me or fix things anymore. I had the life I wanted. The next few weeks were filled with excitement. I spent my days focused on school and my weekends working at the cafe. I wasn't tied down by guilt or the need for validation. I had a strong support system: Sarah, my friends, and, most importantly, Grandma. As the semester wrapped up and I was preparing for another round of finals, I realized how far I had come. I was no longer the girl who worked 2 jobs just to survive. I was no longer the girl who felt invisible and overlooked. I was Emma, the one who made it on her own, the one who fought for what she deserved. One Sunday afternoon, Grandma called me, and we talked for hours as we always did. We discussed my plans for the future, my dreams of graduate school, and how I was still adjusting to the idea of living a life free from my parents' expectations. "You've done so well," Grandma said, her voice proud. "But remember, it's your life to live. You're the one who decides what happens next." And she was right. I had control over my future now. The past no longer had a hold on me. It wasn't about my parents, or Lucas, or the mistakes they made. It was about what I wanted to do with my life, so I made a decision. I wasn't going to keep looking back. I was going to keep moving forward. With Grandma by my side and the strength I had built, I was ready for whatever came next. The future was wide open, and for the first time I wasn't afraid.